Thank you for pressing start on episode 20 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today we have 2 secret games, followed by a review of our featured game, Unpacking. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bopo, and joining me is my player 2, DiscoCola. What is up?
I've came in here with all my problems, but I lifted with my legs, so I'm ready to talk about this game with you, Bopo. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. My stuffed tiger. Those are, of course, I thought about calling you my stuffed piggy, but
that has connotations.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Those are, of course, references to our featured game, Unpacking, which we'll get into later in this episode. And I just want to, up top, bring you up to speed, listeners, on our plan for the rest of this season. We're almost done with season 2 already.
Holy snoot.
And as we sit down in this room, we've just started releasing season 2 episodes. We're up to 2 episodes into season 2 released into the world, so it's a little bit staggered. So it's kind of surreal, that we'll be soon done with season 2 and planning season 3. And so next episode after this one, you can expect another quote unquote normal episode where we'll have 2 secret games and then a featured game. With Disco Elysium will be the featured game of our season 2 closing normal episode. And then we'll have the same kind of episode we had to cap off season 1, which is reflecting back on the season and then planning the next season. So it'll be a 2-parter. We will have our dozen or more awards and categories of conversation topics.
Already been thinking about some of those.
Awesome. And we will then move on to season 3 planning, assuming we still both want to keep doing this show. I mean, I still want to keep doing it. Do you want to?
I've been planning on it. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. It's set then. And last time we did that kind of episode, looking back on season 1 and planning season 2, we had a very lengthy section where we vetted out all these games that could be potential future featured games that are appropriate as a featured game because of their notoriety, because they do new experimental things, because of their noteworthiness, right? And we have decided we're not going to do that piece of our season 2 closer when we're planning season 3, but we're going to do all that stuff outside of this room, outside of these recordings, but we will have this massive list of vetted, approved, featured game candidates, and the whole goal of that section of planning season 3 will just be picking the lineup of featured games.
Yeah.
So it should be much more streamlined.
Yeah, that list
much more
is huge now too.
It is very huge.
We've been adding to it. It's quite massive.
So more of the conversation will probably be about what categories of games are we picking from? How many games in X genre are we picking for the season? I want to pick a game from this category and this genre and try to get a good variety of stuff planned for our 3rd season. So looking forward to that a lot. And I think that's all I wanted to cover up top here in the episode. So let's move on to our secret games.
Secret games. Secret games. Secret games. Secret games.
Secret Games is that segment where we each review an indie game we've been playing in secret since our last episode. We don't talk about our picks at all before this recording. We keep them a surprise for this very moment. We can each choose any indie game as long as we haven't reviewed it before. And this might surprise you, DiscoCola. We're going to start with you.
What?
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 20 of Underplayed.
My secret game this episode is Wilmot's Warehouse.
Oh, I have heard of this.
You have heard of this.
And I actually have a list of possible secret games I keep on the GG app. It's a private list. And this game is actually in that list. And I have purchased it, but I have not played it.
Oh, snoot.
So I've seen like cover art. I know very vaguely what is going on in it, but you'll have to start from scratch, obviously, like you always do.
All right. Well, Wilmot's Warehouse is a warehouse sim, maybe from Richard Hogg and Ricky Haggett, released in 2019. And you have that trailer there in our conversation if you want to pull that up. In this game, you play as Wilmot, the cube-shaped operator of the warehouse. As Wilmot, you receive shipments of other cube-shaped items and you organize them however you see fit in your warehouse. You have about 2 minutes to unload each shipment before your coworkers will arrive at the window and request the items that they need for customers. After those items go out the door, though, your warehouse will start selling 4 more new items, and then you will receive a new shipment with another 2 minutes to store those items. And it's sort of a rinse and repeat. Now, saying those words does not really express how overwhelming things can get. And sure, you're sending a lot of things out the door to customers, but you're also receiving items, and you're receiving a lot more than you're putting out, with a total variety of items increasing to the final total of 200 varieties. So finding a way to organize your items in a way to make them accessible for customers can start to seem unsurmountable after you get part of the way through the game. So therein lies the challenge, and your space is limited to a point. So allow me to expound on that a little bit. Each round, you retrieve items for your coworkers, and you have the opportunity to earn stars. Each star is based on how quickly you retrieve items. A total of 8 of those stars are awarded from priority orders, and 3 more as sort of like an overall speed ranking of how quickly you made all the deliveries, making a total of 11 possible for each round. However, if you fail to deliver all items in the time limit, you earn no stars, and your manager CJ berates you. But after each third round, the financial quarter ends, and at that time, you're given the opportunity to spend your stars on the ability to carry more items at one time, or you can buy like a little robot helper, or perhaps most importantly, you can spend it on the demolition of pillars that ultimately open up more space. Then after spending these stars, you are given an unlimited time to, quote, take stock, meaning you can clean up and rearrange your warehouse however you see fit, given that you have all these new items. So with limited time in each round and limited space, even after buying all of the demolition, it can still become very easy to get overwhelmed. And that's why it's very nice to have this take stock round after every third round. At one point in my first playthrough, I got to the point where my take stock round would have probably taken close to an hour to sort of reorganize the way I had in my head. So instead of taking the time to do that, I wanted to just kind of see how far I could get without putting any shipments away. And that just that didn't go well. So I don't recommend that. So after I symbolically burned down my first warehouse for the insurance money, I began anew with a plan and a greater understanding of the scope of the game and its challenge. That being said, I still kind of got to the point where I was overwhelmed again, and I still haven't finished the game at this point. I think if I had maybe 2 more play sessions, I could do it, but currently I'm in a state where I still have to reorganize my whole warehouse. It's not like an hour-long task right now, but it would still take some time, and it's not quite... I didn't have quite enough time last night to maybe give that last reorganization push a go. Now, I do know what it takes to reach the, quote, ending of the game, and I have watched it online, and I think that you can kind of brute force the ending in a very short amount of time, but I actually want to try to reach the game in good standing with my current warehouse, and I think I can do that. So, I want to go over some things that I like about this game. First and probably foremost, the total freedom that you have. There's no totally right way to play this game. As I alluded to, you might even be able to opt to do nothing even and still reach the end of the game. Now I'm sure there's some warehouse logistics expert out there that might say, no, there is objectively one most efficient way that you can play this game. But really you're free to think of what you believe to be the most efficient way to set up your warehouse with all your different items. And in my second playthrough, I even tried to sort of adapt the layout of a warehouse that I used to work in for a time, with pretty good results. But I sort of put my own spin on it, and I'll have to, develop my own thoughts even more because I ran out of space with that sort of layout. I also love the aesthetic. You're a square, and all of your items that you interact with are in the shape of a square, which means that all 200 different items manage to pack a distinct enough design on a small square canvas. And everything except the items that go in and out of the warehouse are done in a black and white style. So that makes the items stand out even more. So it's very pretty to look at, even as you're, pit sweating, trying to beat the timer. The music and sound design is really simple and effective. None of the songs are really my favorite or anything, but they're effective at setting the mood. And the sound effects really pop and immediately communicate the actions that are happening on screen. So I think that's pretty cool. And there is more than one way from a control perspective to pick up items. And that's such a fascinating thing that you don't typically think about. But if you need to pick up as many items as you can possibly carry all at once, there's a button for that. If you want to pick up just one item, there's actually two different buttons for that. And if you want to sort of blindly just rapid fire a pickup, regardless of items, there's a button for that too. So there's nuance in your controls if you want it, but you can also just kind of go for it and sort of hope for the best. Things I don't like as much, I can't tell what some items are. And even though I need new glasses, and even though I'm playing on a smaller TV than I usually do lately, looking at these icons online, I still can't quite tell what some of them are. So I inevitably have this huge section of the warehouse that's just organized in a way that's symbols and other.
Yeah, blobby things.
Yeah. Even
rectangular blobby things.
Yeah, absolutely everything in the game does have a predetermined category programmed into it. But I can't always tell what some of them are. And the last thing I don't love too much is that it's so daunting. It can feel like work, which I mean it is. It's an underpaid job simulator, but even down to the ending of the game, it fits that category. But it is still just a bit cuter and less dusty than more warehouses. So that's good at least. Wilmot's Warehouse is a simple and clever game with tons of charm and strong visual appeal. The challenge feels simultaneously surmountable and overwhelming, but still my likes outweigh my dislikes. It makes the player want to prove their organizational skills while also, hopefully, providing the player with some much-needed empathy for warehouse workers. It's not a game I'll turn on to relax like I thought it might be, but it is one that I will turn on when I want to be stimulated and challenged, sort of like an arcade shmup. And so, with all that, I want to give Wilmot's Warehouse a very respectable 7 out of 10.
Yes, this seems like the task mode version of our featured game Unpacking.
Yeah.
Where there are stakes
Yes.
going on. Whereas Unpacking, we'll talk about that game in a moment, obviously. But that game is a very much go at your own pace. There's no timer. There's no score.
Exactly. There's a lot of synergy, but most of the synergy actually comes in the form of opposites.
Yeah. I really admire the item variety, the hundreds of items. That is crazy. It's also interesting looking at this trailer, seeing how the light radius works, how there's a certain radius around
Oh, yeah. I didn't even mention
your
that.
character, how you can see all the items that are very close.
Mm-hmm.
But then beyond this light radius, I think you can see their shapes, but there's no color.
Yeah.
And so that you lose that context of what, maybe if you've sorted by color association, you lose that once you get far away enough from an item. So you have to move back closer to see those items again. And then if you move far enough away, you can't even see the iconography of what that
Right.
item is.
Yeah.
So it does require you to recognize what is around you immediately, but also use your memory
Yeah.
of like, where did I put
Big
all of
memory
this
component.
category thing?
I didn't
Yeah.
even mention that. Yeah, total huge part of the game. Can't believe I didn't say that. Yeah, memory plays a big role.
And I love the charming simplicity of Wilmot just looking around at all the items as he's moving around, just with this really nice smile. I like that. I noticed in the trailer too, you mentioned you're measured for your performance in, Q4 of a certain year or something like that. So it'll say like January 1990, Q1, or a Q4 of 1989, and it's November. Does the date at all have an impact, or is that just a measurement of how long you've been playing Wilmot's Warehouse?
I think that it's mostly insignificant. Yeah. And to be honest, I'm not totally sure. I think it always... There might be an instance where it ends at different dates on the calendar,
Okay.
but I don't see how that can be possible with how I understand the game to work. But for the most part, like the fact that it's Q3 in 2000 makes no difference, really. The parts that's the most important is like the end of the quarter. Like how soon are you coming up on your take stock round? Because those become very necessary very quickly.
Well, it looks like an interesting balance of reaction and also upkeeping in your inventory too. So that is DiscoCola's secret game, Wilmot's Warehouse.
Yes, Wilmot's Warehouse is available on Switch, Xbox One, PS4, which is how I played it, Mac OS, and Windows.
It's time for my secret game. My secret game is Replica.
I have never once heard of this.
So Replica actually has more synergy with Unpacking than I expected, and I don't usually try to seek that synergy unless I'm kind of feeling it once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
And I had a hunch that this might have a little bit of synergy, but that synergy ended up being more in the form of stepping into somebody's shoes, stepping into somebody's private life. So Replica is a 2016, what I would call dystopian political puzzle game / quasi visual novel with hacking elements. I have no idea how to categorize this. And it did originally come out in 2016, but then between 2020 and 2022, it was released for some home consoles. So it's been ported a few times. It was developed by Somi, and it was published by Somi and Zero Rock Entertainment originally, and then I think Playism helped publish for some of those later consoles. I'm going to read the game synopsis from the Steam storefront. Quote, Replica is an interactive novel game played through a cell phone and social media. The insane experience of peeping into someone's private life through a cell phone will transform you into the state's greatest patriot. End quote. So in Replica, you are in service to a very fascist government, and your primary goal is to hack into the phone of a supposed terrorist named Dickie Greenleaf. And the whole experience has you looking at a phone screen in this 2D pixel art style, and you use clues from messages, photos, notifications, social media accounts, and so forth to deduce passwords and details about Dickie's life. And this phone you're looking at resembles iPhones and Android interfaces. There are even parallel apps to what we use in real life. So there is a Facebook-like app called Like. Twitter in this game is called Follow. Gmail is called M-Mail. And while you're playing, someone from the National Security Agency is in constant communication with you, instructing you about what kinds of information to look for. And they also tell you to find evidence that supports their claims. You read messages from Dickie's friends and family, and you see what he was just posting about the other day, and you also learn what his interests are. And as you progress, it becomes apparent that there could be a number of ways to interpret what's going on, but the most obvious message is that the government is very authoritative, paranoid, and they make lots of assumptions that stretch the truth to target innocent people. And so along with all this, the game has about a dozen different endings to find, some of which require getting other endings first. So what I enjoyed about Replica, I think this is a really great simulation of the voyeuristic nature of spying on someone through a personal device. You log into all these various accounts, and that is satisfying. You use all these context clues to figure out what the password might be. You have to examine dates and sequences of numbers to figure out how to get into their like account or their follow account. And the earliest example of breaking a password is you need to just get into the phone. You're handed this phone and the screen is locked. And so this is a little bit of a spoiler. So if you want to play the game completely unspoiled, skip ahead maybe like 15 seconds. You figure out, what information do I have available to me? And you see on the phone, the date is November 4th, 11:04. And even though the phone's locked, you can see a preview of some of the messages Dickie has gotten recently. And one of them says, "Hey, Dickie, it's almost your birthday." And it arrived today on November 4th. And so you could maybe surmise, is his password his birthday? So you try 11:05 the next day. That's how you get into the phone. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. And the UI is instantly understandable because of how closely it resembles the tech of modern phones. So apps have badges that tell you if you have something to read. Switching between apps is very familiar. So it didn't take me long to pick up the controls, even though there's no tutorial telling you how to control the game. And I liked that this game comments on government and privacy. It might not do it in the most biting or original way, but I appreciate that it's there. I think maybe when this game originally released in 2016, that stuff would have been more cutting edge. But I think we're heading closer to our reality resembling some of the satire of this game. So a lot of it was just like, it's like I'm watching a documentary almost. But also the game has lovely little references to other media. So there are other indie games that are referenced in this thing. So the Stanley Parable is referenced. A game called Please Don't Touch Anything is referenced and is actually a very similar format to how this game is set up too. And then the movie The Talented Mr. Ripley is referenced as well because of that character, Dickie Greenleaf. That is, I think, Jude Law's character, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know what the total connection is there between the movie and the game. But I think this game is an easy recommendation for fans of games like Please Don't Touch Anything, or another game I was reminded of, Papers, Please. If you like the kind of dystopian, authoritative, fascist government style games where you're kind of in this very unique situation, I think you would jive with this. What I didn't enjoy as much about Replica, the controls on consoles, at least on the console I played, were very terrible, actually. Using the stick to control the cursor was way too sensitive, and I could not find a way to adjust the scrolling sensitivity. So I would do a lot of pushing the stick forward, and the cursor would move way too far up the screen, and I have to do the back and forth thing to get it right in the spot that I wanted. And I didn't have that kind of issue with other games like this where you're controlling a cursor on a controller like in Unpacking. So I know it can be done better, and I just wish it would have. It would have been an easy implementation to do that. So I think this game is probably better on PC or a mobile device. So I would encourage you to play it on that kind of a platform. Sometimes the game can be a click-a-thon when the government is having you tag info for which there's no penalty for selecting something invalid. You don't really get penalized for just clicking everything on the screen. And if you can't figure it out, you just start clicking everything until you get the thing, if that makes sense. And then I think this thing has too many endings. I wish the game had just 2 or 3 endings and that the overall experience was a little longer. Instead, you get the first ending in under an hour. Like, it's a very short game. And then I didn't find any desire to see more endings, especially because some of them require steps that are very obtuse. There are a few that require you to wait hours of in-game time to see a certain event unfold. And I wasn't patient enough to see that. I wasn't interested enough to see that. I'm not even sure if those extra endings are substantial or even canon in the proper story. I think it's really more of like a choose your own adventure style story where the ending you get is the chosen canon of the story that you've just played. So I just thought that was a little too much that I didn't care to explore. But overall, Replica is a puzzle game that has a very focused format and setup. It works best when you're looking for clues and checking off tasks about building a case against Dickie or maybe for Dickie. And the first few endings you get are satisfying enough. I'm not sure all the extra endings are worthwhile. Make sure you play it on a computer or a mobile device. And I'm going to rate this a 6 out of 10.
Excellent.
It is playable on iOS, Android, PC, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, which is where I played it, and Xbox One.
All right. Well, I do have a couple questions. Does the game ever, and I'm looking at the trailer here, does the game ever leave the like phone in your hand like screen? Are you ever doing anything else, or are you always just holding the phone?
From what I experienced with the multiple endings I saw, the whole game was looking at that phone, like seeing that motionless hand with the phone screen in there. So I don't know if playing the mobile version, if you even see the hand, because the aspect ratio would be different.
Right.
I think it'd be cool if you could just see the field of view of the phone. So that's something that I guess is what that game looks like on that platform. But as far as when you're playing in like 16:9 on console or PC, it is looking at that hand, and your environment really isn't changing around the phone. It's all kind of just stuff in your peripheral vision because you're just looking at that center part of the screen.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sort of seems like, and this is one of my pet peeves in film, is when it's like a procedural, sort of like a cop show, and they're like looking around the room trying to find what the password might be. And I like, in my own personal like life, none of my passwords are anything like that ever at all. And so I guess what my question is like, how much does this game lean into that? Or are some of these like passwords that you have to crack sort of a little bit more what I would call realistic?
Yeah. So all the passwords that I ran into are 4-digit numbers because this game can't get that complicated with requiring you to type in a bunch of complicated things. So a lot of it is looking for sequences of numbers. A lot of it is looking for maybe dates, like getting into the phone, or looking at metadata on a picture, maybe, so it has you looking in a variety of places, but the setup is you're looking for a sequence of 4 numbers. It didn't distract me too much because the whole thing is kind of a satire going on. And I looked at it more as a puzzle. Like, what sequence of numbers does the game want me to pay attention to?
Yeah.
Now, there's another kind of way you get a password that's different than looking for numbers that's very funny and fun, but I don't want to spoil it.
Of course.
Too. So there's a good variety there, I'd say.
Cool. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I have an incredible fear, and it's growing all the time, an incredible fear of like privacy invasion on the internet. Which is not the primary reason that I still have a flip phone, but it is moving up that list very quickly. So I will probably not play this one, but I am glad that you did, and it looks pretty clever.
Yeah, it was clever, and I actually would not recommend this to you, frankly. I would not think you'd enjoy this one as much. I think you'd be safer picking a different game for your like jealous game of season 2, for instance. Like, I think you can disregard this one for that category.
I have a little bit of cold sweat going on right now. My wife was even watching this like docuseries about internet, invasion of privacy, and I had to leave the room a little bit.
Oh wow.
So
yeah. Well, even if you do try it, it's thankfully pretty short, so you can give it a try. And if you don't, it's not your thing, you haven't invested a ton of time. So those are our secret games, Wilmot's Warehouse and Replica. Let's move on to our review of Unpacking, it is our featured game. Unpacking is a 2021 organization sim. It was released also in 2022 for PlayStation consoles and was developed by Witchbeam, published by Humble Games. I will read the game synopsis from the Steam storefront. Quote, Unpacking is a Zen puzzle game about the familiar experience of pulling possessions out of boxes and fitting them into a new home. Part block fitting puzzle, part home decoration, you are invited to create a satisfying living space while learning clues about the life you're unpacking. End quote. In Unpacking, it has what I would call a really high-res pixel art style. Would you describe it that way too? It's played in an isometric perspective, and you start in the year 1997, and you're young, you're filling out your kid's room with toys and books, and items can be rotated and stacked and placed on shelves and in drawers. Electronics can be turned on, posters can be hung on the wall, and so forth. And most objects have a good amount of freedom with where they can be placed, but there are also boundaries. So, for example, you can't put clothes and appliances on the floor. You can't put toilet paper on your bed. You can't put plants on the sofa. So items generally have a logical placement rule set. But within that rule set, there's a good variety of places to put things. And like we said earlier, there's no sort of scoring or point system. You don't do better for arranging items in a certain way. The goal is simply to find a rightful place for all the items. And then through those items and where you're living, understand the life of the person you're unpacking through all 8 levels. And this is the same person's life you're unpacking for. From 1997 to 2018, you see them go off to school, live with roommates and romantic partners, and express hobbies and career goals through where they're living and the things you're unpacking for them. And levels generally get larger and more complex as your character's life gets more complex. I'll also add, you don't actually see people in this game.
Correct.
You don't hear any people's voices. You see some little nuggets of information written out in your photo journal, but really you're not getting any interaction from actual people. You're using the context of what you're pulling out of their moving boxes to understand who they are. So DiscoCola, I think it's accurate to say that we, but especially you, enjoy collecting stuff.
That is an accurate thing to say.
And now we have this game Unpacking that's all about holding items, rotating items, organizing and placing stuff. So was that alluring to you when you saw a gameplay trailer for this?
To be honest, the whole like collection part of my lizard brain doesn't have too much to do with it, but I really loved the pixel art style, and I thought it looked just so relaxing and fun and cute. One of the cutest games in recent years that I had really been looking forward to.
Yeah, this kind of fits into the cozy game umbrella, the wholesome game umbrella that's been really popular the past few years and shows no signs of stopping. I think we're going to see even more and more of those games as the years go on. And I will say this game was very alluring to me as somebody who likes organizing things. I like finding the right place for things. You know, I have different bags and backpacks for different scenarios of my life. I'm not like an everyday carry kind of guy, but I do like not only finding a good backpack for something, but finding little organizers to put in my backpack. And then what am I going to put in those organizers? I also, a game that I've loved playing the past few years is Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Yeah.
And a big distraction in that game is, how do you want to decorate your house? How do you want to decorate your island? What kinds of items do you want to give your villagers? What sorts of scenes do you want to set up? What furniture should go where? What items should you put on the wall? What's the best optimal way in your mind to decorate things? And they had a whole DLC pack dedicated to making vacation paradise islands for visitors as well. So I've really gotten into that stuff. I love the collection, not only the collection part, but just figuring out where does all this stuff go. So that's what drew me to Unpacking. But we'll start with your overall thoughts. How was this experience for you? What did you think of Unpacking?
Well, like I sort of mentioned earlier, when I first heard about this game, I kind of thought it was just going to be this simple, shallow, relaxing game. Unpack more and more complex things as you get further into the game. But it's so much more than that, and I wasn't expecting that. I did hear shortly before starting that, quote, you learn about people's lives by unpacking their stuff. And I was not expecting to be able to learn about anyone's life journey. I thought, certainly that we would not even be unpacking the same person's stuff the whole time. Even after I heard that, I thought it was going to be levels of different people's stuff, but you still learn a little bit about who they are based on this. But it's the same person. I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah. And if you go back to our planning season 2 episode 11 from season 1, we didn't know this about the game. And all I said in that moment when we picked it, I think I said, you're unpacking stuff for different people and learning about them. I didn't know it was about one person either.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this game since season 1. And man, I was not disappointed. In fact, I had a much better time than I could have imagined. And some of this has to do with the fact that I played this game with my wife.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Not only did I get to play this game with my wife, but she also loved it.
Oh.
And she's not really into like games at all. So it's super cool to get to the end of the game and have her say, I kind of want to just do some of these rooms again. And that just totally
Here, have a whole album save file.
Right. That just totally filled my cup. I think this game is genius, man. It tells a story through items that you unpack, which items are available in which levels, and even to a smaller extent, how items are packed within the boxes that they're packed in, and locations that you're not allowed to unpack certain items. It's just brilliant. And everything is in that absolutely wonderful pixel art isometric style. This game speaks to so many of my levels. Yeah, man, I love this game. I do want to talk about a couple of dislikes.
Sure.
Before we get into your thoughts. One, unpacking Witchbeam. It's possible to unpack silverware in some more creative ways in real life. Just get on my level, bro.
Ooh, can you say more about that?
You can like flip your measuring cups upside down, and they don't have to take up like 4 squares. You can tuck them under each other.
Yeah.
Flip one set upside down. Come on, man. 2, second thing I don't like as much. I still couldn't tell what some items were, even if after I did learn how to zoom in, which is not something I learned how to do until like the second level. And then 3, I want more. Like here at Underplayed, we appreciate the short featured games, but I just wanted some more. But that's it. Those are my complaints. This game rules. So if you're ready, I want to give it my score.
What's your score for Unpacking?
I want to give Unpacking a 10 out of 10.
No way!
Yes.
Oh, I love that you loved it so much.
Now,
oh my gosh.
Bopo, you're going to notice that I specifically compared to a certain bug-themed game earlier in this season. This has a higher score than that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, because that game is one of my favorite games of all time.
I get it. You're talking about Hollow Knight.
Yes, I'm talking about Hollow Knight.
Yes. You weren't talking about Bug Fables, the Everlasting Sapling?
So while that game in particular is one of my favorite games, period, this perfect 10 out of 10 score of Unpacking doesn't come only from the quality of the game, but the impact that it had on me and how long I will still think back to my experience playing this game.
That is incredible. And the experience of playing it with your wife.
Yes.
I'm sure like that is something you don't get in pretty much any games from what it sounds like, because she doesn't enjoy games as much. But I'm glad you could find an experience you could share with her and one that you'll look back on and that was probably more meaningful to you than you expected going in.
Absolutely.
I'll go into my overall thoughts. I loved this. I think it's a celebration of how all the things we have basically tell the story of who we are. And I never expected to get so much storytelling out of the objects I was placing. I understood so much about this person for whom I was unpacking, both through what they had, but also what was sometimes left behind from a previous move or a previous
Right.
year.
Exactly.
So I don't want to spoil too much about the special moments of this game, but the very first level, when you're a kid, you're about 11 years old, I estimate, because I did some estimations based on like when this person was entering college
Mhm.
and then subtracted years to get back to the very first year, which is 1997. So I estimate you start this at 11 years old.
Yeah, you're old enough to have a soccer trophy, at least.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Astute observation. And then I think it goes up to when this person is about 32 years old, if my math is correct. And when you start, you have a dreidel. And so you wonder, oh, are you Jewish?
Hmm.
And then later on, you are unpacking stuff from a box for your kitchen and you unpack a menorah. It's like, oh yeah, that confirms that. But I didn't take my dreidel with me. Maybe that was more of a childhood thing. So there's a little nugget there. So you can surmise things about this person through their objects. And some objects change over time. So they have a stuffed pig, which is all over the cover art for this game. It's kind of the symbolic item of what this game is about. And that stuffed pig changes every year. It's kind of one of the things you carry with you. And it's got sentimental value for this character, you can tell. And it becomes damaged over time. And then it becomes sewn up. And then eventually it gets a ribbon tied around its neck at the end, a nice shiny new ribbon. And there's this little story there. You can imagine somebody upkeeping that pig, refreshing and restoring that pig over time, like we do with our prized possessions. And it made me think of my wife has a blankie that's from when she was a baby, and she
Mhm.
still has that.
Yep.
And it's torn up,
Oh, yeah.
and she's talked about fixing it, talked about sewing it back together so that all the pieces look not so tattered. But there's also something special about keeping it the way it is, as kind of a symbolism for how long it's been around. And there's storytelling through what you can and cannot place. You mentioned some items being off limits to put certain places. I think that's inherently really interesting. You eventually get roommates, and there are things of theirs that are just untouchable. You can't touch them because that
Mhm.
makes sense. When you
Yeah.
move in with your first roommates, you don't touch where their toothbrush cup is in the bathroom. You leave that where it is. But then you move in with your boyfriend at some point, and a lot of his things are untouchable. And there's a moment at the end of that level that I had with your college degree.
Yeah.
And I won't say anything more, but that moment made my jaw drop.
Yep.
Where I had to put that told me so much about not only where that relationship was, but where that relationship would go. And then when the next scenario happened, when the next move happened, my suspicions were confirmed
Yeah.
that we're in a different place in our life now. And man, it was just so simple and so effective. And there are several moments like that. I love the sound design. It's so effective. When you place items, there are all of these squishes and clicks and clacks
Mhm.
of items that's really satisfying. When you close a box, that gave me a little endorphin boost. When you take all the items out of a box and then you can make it disappear, just that sign of progress in unpacking is so great, even if it's very simple. And like all these kinds of games where you're placing items in any number of combinations, there is a grid system, but it's a super tight system. Unlike games like Animal Crossing, where there are invisible walls around items and you mysteriously can't push one piece of furniture exactly like butt up against another furniture item because the grid system is a little mysterious. Here, there's a lot more freedom. You can put things right next to each other. You can place things on top of other things. And those things don't even have to be the same thing. You can put a video game on top of a book,
Mhm.
and you can put those on top of a bigger spiral notebook. You know, you can stack things in a way that I didn't expect. And so there's a lot of freedom there. And because of how tight and precise all that placement felt, it made me want to take the extra time to tidy my rooms, to organize my drawers, and to make my shelves look neat.
Mm-hmm.
When you finish levels, there's a playback feature, and that's amazing. You can see a history of all of the things that you placed leading up to the moment you finished the level, and you can play it back at super fast speed. I loved watching the history of what I just did in a level presented to me. I saved all my videos on my console too. So I was doing lots of screenshots and video saves on my PlayStation. Love the music too. It is fun. It can be emotional. I'm very bad at describing music, but it's a great mix of acoustic and kind of peppy. Techno might not be the right word, but very catchy melodies are going on in Unpacking. And also, again, this is a no spoiler moment, but Unpacking really understands that representation of certain groups in entertainment media matters, and it represents a number of different groups in this game. And so I just had a few dislikes like you. Certain objects are harder to place and maneuver than others. I'm thinking of clothes on hangers.
Yeah.
Whenever I wanted to take a shirt off a hanger or pants off of pant hangers, I would end up selecting the whole hanger and the thing. I couldn't figure out how to uncouple them sometimes. I love how you can stack books and DVD cases next to each other, but when you have a vertical stack of books, you can't pick them all up and flip them 90 degrees and put them horizontally on the shelf. You have to manually pick up each one and put them on the shelf. I couldn't figure out how to get a whole vertical stack of things to flip together. So there are those moments where you're just doing the same kind of monotonous thing to a stack of things. And then some levels are a little fatiguing to play in one sitting. And it might be because I am so meticulous with where I'm putting things. I'm such a perfectionist with where I'm trying to optimize how to lay out a room. But I'm thinking of the years 2013 and 2018. I found those to be a little fatiguing in length, and I couldn't do them all in one sitting. And like you, I kind of wish there was more to this game. I wish it was longer. I would play more Unpacking. I'd play an Unpacking 2. But I think the levels in theory are designed to be played in one sitting at a time. But I would sometimes do like a few rooms in one sitting. So that's how I segmented my play times. But overall, Unpacking I found to be really charming and simplistic. And I thought it told an effective story about people without ever using words or showing us the people. And that's a very hard thing to pull off. And along the way, it catered to a lot of my neuroses about organization and how to find the optimal place for your things. And if you enjoy the art of Tetrising your everyday objects, you're going to find a lot of great treats in this thing. So my score I was prepared to give this was a 9, and I contemplated giving it a 9.5.
Ooh.
And I think I'm going to go up to a 9.5.
Excellent.
After hearing you and talking about it again. So we're having a Hollow Knight situation, but inverse.
Oh, that's excellent.
Where I'm bumping mine up. So it is a 9.5 from me.
Oh, that is excellent, my dude.
And
yeah, this game rules.
Yes. And right after I played it, I put it in my top 100 indie games list.
Oh, okay. Guessing game time.
Now, this is the indie games list. So
Okay.
this is a very focused list.
Uh-huh.
So like the bottom 20 to 30 games are like 6 out of 10s for me, right? So keep that in mind.
Yes.
And for reference, Death's Door I put it number 10 on my top indie
Okay.
games
Where's
list.
Hollow Knight again on that?
Oh, hold on. I've got the answer. Hollow Knight is number 3.
Okay. And Death's Door is 10. So it's time for me to guess?
Yes.
14.
Very, very close. 12.
Wow.
I put it at 12.
Heck yes.
And then in my top 100 games list, it is in that list at 45.
Wow, that's even higher than I would have guessed.
Yeah.
That is excellent.
I want to know a little bit more about playing it with your wife. Were you taking turns suggesting where to put things? Were you controlling the whole time? Were you passing the controller? Like what? Paint the picture more about what that was like.
So we are trading off rooms, essentially. So obviously the first room, the first year is just the one room. So you don't get a trade-off there. So it sort of depends on what each year is. But we're trading off rooms. We're sort of, when we get to some of the bigger houses, we're scrolling through and seeing what's available and sort of like divvying up what we want to do. Oftentimes, I'll take some of the stuff that I'm like, I know she's not going to care as much about this. Usually I was pretty excited to do the office, so I was happy to get the office, whereas like my wife will want to do the kitchen and the living room. So very, very happy most of the time to divide that stuff up and then just trade off rooms.
Awesome. I actually pitched this to my wife as something we could maybe enjoy together. And I thought it would cater to her sensibilities too. I was like, have you heard of Unpacking? It's a nice, cozy, great looking game, great music. It is about organizing things. It's about taking things out of boxes. You love doing that, finding the right thing. And she said, that really doesn't look appealing to me. I do a lot of that in real life. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fair. That's fair. So I'm kind of envious of that cooperative experience you were able to create for yourselves.
I mean, I've done a lot of those similar pitches, ones that I know that I'm objectively correct about anyway, that I know she would enjoy, but rarely succeed. I don't know what it was about this one where she was like, okay, yeah, I'll do this. But
as I got through this game more and more, I was doing the one room at a time thing where I do all of the bathroom before even touching the living room or the bedroom. And then I realized, you know what I like doing? Because you don't always know what's going to come out of that box. I'm just going to start unpacking all of the things from a box and just throw everything onto the floor in the room and get every single box in the apartment or the room or the house unpacked, make all the boxes disappear. And then I can see everything on the floor, and then I'll start putting things in drawers and on counters and things like that. So did your strategy change throughout? Is that similar to what you did?
No, we sort of stuck with the one box at a time, one item at a time thing.
Okay.
Now, it did get to the point, especially in certain kitchens, where that is objectively the more efficient thing to do, is what you did, because you have boxes standing in the way of entire shelving units. And so you can't put anything on there. Sometimes you don't even know it's there until that box has been emptied out.
Yeah.
And in earlier levels, whoever this person is just threw crap in a box. You're shuffling rooms all over the place just because you don't know what's going to come out of there.
Yes, that's a little detail that I loved is this game understands the randomness of when you are young and you're packing up boxes haphazardly.
Yeah.
Like you're unpacking your bedroom items, the box in your bedroom, and you're taking out a shirt and some socks and underwear and pretty standard things.
Not all of your shirts and socks and underwear.
Right. But then all of a sudden out comes a quesadilla grill. You're like, why is this in here? I can't put this anywhere. I have to move this over to the kitchen. Or, you're unpacking your kitchen items and out comes a sock. And it's like, oh, got to switch over to the other room. And so I love that. That's how I have always packed up things. Just kind of throwing anything into a box that fits in a good configuration, no matter if it belongs in the right room together. And other details. When you try to close a closet door or a cabinet, something on the ground is in the way. It bounces back. That you can't shut that door until that boot is out of the way. I love that. That was kind of a surprising moment. I'm like, why can't I close that door?
It took me a minute to figure it out sometimes.
And it kept bumping into it and making that sound effect. And then I realized. And I love the references to our real world brands. Like there is a Wii gaming console. There is a GameCube gaming console. There is a DS. You have movies, you have Blu-rays and DVDs. And there are even references to movies like Jaws and what I thought was Donnie Darko and Up.
Yeah, I saw Donnie Darko. Yeah, that's what it was.
I thought that was really enjoyable, just trying to recognize like what are the little references to our real world in Unpacking. I also like when you choose your photo album at the start of the game, you can choose a save file, and the save files are photo albums. And you either choose the red, blue, or green one. And whatever photo album you choose for your save file, that photo album is an item that shows up in every year of your life.
Mhm.
So if you choose the red photo album, which is the first one, the one I did, I got the red photo album every single time I unpacked my boxes. And then to test my theory on this, when I finished the game, I just selected the green album. And sure enough, in that first year, 1997, I unpacked the green photo album. I love
Nice.
that. Also, the developers, Witchbeam, they're active online. And I found their account on TikTok, actually. And if you follow them on TikTok, they have some interesting content where they'll give you little tips about little features in the game that aren't outright explained. Like they explain you can put things under your pillows.
Mhm.
You know, they give lots of those little nuggets. So I liked learning about that too. Can you think of any surprising little details like that that's captured you?
Yes. There are a lot of like secret interactive items that weren't immediately clear to me. And once I figured that out, it made me want to go back and you know, not rotate the item, but just, press the rotate button on the item and see what can that item do if
Yeah.
I do this. Because, a lot of these items turn on or use electricity to do something.
Yes.
Or, well, heck, even if you have your alarm clock plugged in and then you pick it up because you're going to move it somewhere else, but then you set it back down, it will default to the flashing like 12 o'clock
Oh,
reset alarm clock timer because
interesting.
you cut the power from the alarm clock.
I didn't notice that one.
You have to reset the time again.
Love that.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I set my time on the microwave.
Yeah.
I did that. Yeah.
I loved the trinkets like from international travel. Something I don't ever get to do or necessarily want to, but just like seeing the progression of which ones are available and surmising where this person has been.
Yes. And I eventually, so I started placing those all around where I was living. But then since I had so many by the end of the game, I started keeping a dedicated space
Yeah.
where I kept them in a row. It's
Yeah.
like, this is my knickknacks from my travels shelf.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I even tried to like, toward the end there, sort of figure out what was the sequential order that these arrived in and sort of set them up
Oh.
in the right order.
Yeah. In chronological order.
yeah.
Yeah. I also loved the little bit of flavor text you get when you proceed from a level, you're done, you've placed everything in a proper spot, and whatever room you end on and decide to end the level on, it will take a snapshot of that room, and that is the thumbnail in your photo album before you move on to the next level. And every single one of those thumbnails had a little bit of flavor text. On one of the levels, when you end on the living room, it takes a snapshot of that living room and it says, I'll figure out where to get a couch from later. I think it's when you're
Oh.
in college or something like that. Or when you move back home to your childhood bedroom, it says, this room used to feel bigger,
Mhm.
but you'll get a different piece of flavor text every time you end on a different room.
I didn't know that.
So I actually spent about 10 minutes cycling through all the pictures and all the flavor text on all 8 levels. And that you get a little bit more that way from this person. And that's the only time you're interacting with language from the person,
Ooh.
So I thought that was important to see. So I recommend doing that. Doesn't take too long.
I guess that makes sense. Like I chose a specific room in the last level for the little thumbnail, but I didn't think about how none of the other rooms would really make sense with that flavor text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the final level with that kind of really small bathroom,
Mhm.
the flavor text is something like bonus toilet or something. It's really funny. So a lot of them made me chuckle. And speaking of things that made me chuckle, the achievement/trophy lists.
Yes.
So charming. Such
Yeah.
a great trophy list. Such a fun trophy list. One of my favorite trophy lists of any game we've played for a featured game on Underplayed. It has you doing things like putting the cookie jar out of reach, because it's assumed this person is trying to limit how many sweets they're eating.
Right.
You have to put an electric item in the bathtub. You get fridge magnets, and you have to write out an equation using the fridge magnets on one
that
of the
one's
levels.
cool.
And then you get eventually 2 particular stuffed animals, and it's very meaningful to put them side by side for a specific story reason. And so it has you putting them side by side. Those are just a few examples. The whole thing is great. It's an easy platinum / 100%. So I enjoyed the achievements in this a lot.
Yeah, we're big trophy hunters here at Underplayed. Most of the time in the past, whenever people are playing my PlayStation, I put them on a different profile because I don't want them to earn my trophies. Unless I really hate the game and I just want to be done with it, which has happened. But in this case, part of that fun that I had playing with my wife was seeing her earn some of these trophies, and I was totally cool with it because it made her not like so happy like it does for us. You know, she doesn't have that brain disease, but but it still made her happy to get those trophies, and I was super excited for her to get some of these.
Yeah, and I like how some of them are humorous things that I genuinely thought to do without knowing there was an achievement attached to them. And some of them were a little mysterious and I had to look them up. Like when I moved back home into my childhood bedroom, I was poking through my drawers, the things I left behind from when I was 11.
Right.
And I saw, the poster folded up. I saw some like toys and I thought, oh, that's where some of that stuff went. I left it behind, obviously. But I picked up the poster. I thought, oh, I wonder if this still looks the same. I'm going to put it on the wall just for gags. And that's an achievement,
Nice.
Find this old poster and use it again. I love that. So, I do hope there's a sequel to this. I think they could do a continuation of this person's life, maybe about their later years from 32 onwards, or maybe about a completely other person. New person. Yeah. Because I think when you're young, 11 to 32 years old, that's when you're probably moving the most in your life. That's when you have the most variety in your living situations. So it'd be interesting to see someone go through that same sort of timeline, or maybe someone who is older. I don't know. They could also maybe just do an expansion, DLC, and it's just a few extra levels. I would dig that a lot. So I hope we get that.
There is one other thing that I thought of. Some of the other synergy that was going to go into this episode was that my wife also played Wilmot's Warehouse with me, but she dropped off. She couldn't hang.
Yeah. Too much stress with that one.
Not quite the stress-free experience that we had with Unpacking. So I just wanted to say that, mention that.
I'm glad she gave that one a shot.
Yeah. That was sort of like why I finished another secret game that I'm just going to save until episode 10. I originally planned for this episode, but part of picking Wilmot's Warehouse was that it was a little bit more, maybe my wife will enjoy this.
Yeah.
And so that was hopefully where some of the synergy was going to come to.
Okay. Well, I thought the synergy just with that game setup was very fitting for
still
Unpacking. Still very fitting. And I'm glad that Unpacking met and maybe exceeded our expectations. It's a game we both really loved. That's our review of Unpacking. You can play it on PC, Mac, Linux, Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S.
Physical versions incoming.
Oh, man. DiscoCola rated it a 10. I rated it a 9.5. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast services like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Oni Mochi. Underplayed is on Twitter at UnderplayedPod. You can find me on Twitter at Bopo. That's BO_PO. And check out that same handle on the GG app, where you can see my game lists and what I'm currently playing.
And I'm DiscoCola on Twitter and currently on hiatus, but also on Twitch.
Next time, we will have 2 more secret games, and our featured review will cover Disco Elysium, The Final Cut, an RPG developed by Zom. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.